Lieutenant Commander Thomas Reed woke up to alarms blaring through his small room on the Asturian Royal Citadel. He had been working as a language expert here for 8 months. 8 months was long enough to know that when alarms went off at 3 in the morning, something bad was happening. "Reed here," he said into his communication device while getting dressed quickly. "What's going on?" "We need you in the main hall right now," said Martinez. She worked the night shift and always sounded tired. "There's a big problem with the peace talks. The translation computers are all broken." Thomas ran through the hallways of the space station. The Citadel was beautiful but confusing. It looked like someone had built a fancy palace inside a spaceship. The Asturians liked things to be both pretty and useful. The Asturian Royal Citadel was where aliens from many different planets came to talk and make deals. Queen Serafina Valari was in charge. She was smart and fair, and everyone respected her. The Citadel could hold aliens who lived in water, aliens made of crystal, and everything in between. When Thomas got to the main hall, Elder Kesvar was waiting. He wore special robes that showed he was an important legal expert. "Commander Reed, we have an emergency. All our translation machines stopped working. Queen Serafina needs someone who can translate by hand between human and Asturian languages." Thomas bowed carefully. He had learned that bowing the wrong way could mean you wanted to marry someone or fight them. "I'll help however I can. What are we translating?" Queen Serafina looked up from her screens. She had purple eyes that looked very tired. "Commander Reed, we are trying to stop a war. 2 groups of humans and Asturians are about to fight over who owns a planet. If we cannot talk to each other, people will die." "How long until the fighting starts?" Thomas asked. 72 hours, Elder Kesvar said. "Maybe less. The translation computers were our only way to communicate fast enough. Without them, we cannot negotiate." Thomas looked at the screens showing angry ships gathering near a small planet. "Your Majesty, I can translate, but translating a whole peace conference by myself will be very hard. I'll need to stay awake for days." "I know what I'm asking is difficult," Queen Serafina said, "but you are the only human here who speaks perfect Asturian. Without you, war is certain." The next 3 days were the hardest of Thomas's life. He stood between human and Asturian leaders, translating every word they said. He couldn't make mistakes because one wrong word could start a war. Queen Serafina stayed with him the whole time. She helped explain things when Thomas didn't understand the cultural meanings behind certain words. Sometimes words meant different things to different species. "Commander Reed," Queen Serafina said during a short break on the 2nd day. "When humans say honor, what do they really mean?" Thomas rubbed his tired eyes. "It depends on the human. Some mean keeping promises. Some mean protecting family. Some mean dying for what you believe in. And when Asturians say honor, we mean bringing benefit to the whole community, not just yourself." She looked thoughtful. "No wonder we keep misunderstanding each other." They worked together to find new ways to explain ideas so both sides could understand. It was like building a bridge made of words between 2 completely different ways of thinking. By the 3rd day, Thomas was so tired he could barely stand. His voice was getting rough from talking so much. But the peace talks were almost done. Just a few more hours. That's when everything went wrong. "The translation you just gave was incorrect," shouted a human colonel named Director Walsh. She worked for a big company that wanted to control the planet. "Commander Reed is changing our words to help the Asturians." "That's not true," Thomas said. "I translated exactly what you said." "You're a traitor," Director Walsh accused. "You've been spending too much time with alien royalty. You care more about them than about your own people." Queen Serafina stood up. Her voice was calm but powerful. Director Walsh, Commander Reed has worked for 3 days without sleep to prevent war. He has translated with perfect accuracy. Your accusation is false. Of course you would defend him, Director Walsh sneered. Everyone can see that you two have become too close. It's inappropriate. Thomas felt his face get hot. It was true that he and Queen Seraphina had become friends during these long days of working together. But there was nothing wrong with that. Director Walsh, Elder Kesvar said firmly, do you have proof that Commander Reed mistranslated anything? I don't need proof. Everyone knows humans should only be loyal to humans. He's clearly been compromised. The room erupted in angry voices. Some people agreed with Director Walsh. Others defended Thomas. The peace talks fell apart as everyone started arguing. Queen Seraphina tried to restore order, but it was too late. The human delegation walked out. The Asturian delegation looked insulted. Within an hour, both sides were preparing for war again. Thomas sat down heavily in an empty chair. 3 days of work destroyed in minutes. All because someone decided to question his loyalty. I'm sorry, he said to Queen Seraphina when they were alone. I failed. You did not fail, she said gently. Director Walsh sabotaged the talks on purpose. She wants this war to happen. Why would anyone want war? Because her company will make money from it. War means both sides need weapons, supplies, ships. Her company sells all those things. Queen Seraphina pulled up secret files on her screen. I've been investigating. Director Walsh has been working to make sure these peace talks fail. Thomas looked at the evidence. Messages showing Director Walsh coordinating with weapons dealers. Financial records showing how much profit she would make from war. Plans to blame the peace talks' failure on him. She used me, Thomas said bitterly. She knew if she accused me of being a traitor, everyone would get angry and the talks would fail. Yes, and now we have less than 24 hours before the fighting starts. Queen Seraphina looked at him with determination. Commander Reed, I have an idea, but it's risky and you might not want to do it. I'll do anything to stop this war. I can make you an official Asturian diplomat. If you have official status, you can call an emergency meeting under ancient peace laws. Both sides would have to attend. Thomas thought about it. But if I become an Asturian diplomat, Director Walsh will say I really am a traitor. Humans might never trust me again. I know. That's why it's your choice. He looked at the screens showing the ships getting ready to fight. Thousands of people on both sides would die. All because of one person's greed. How do we do it? Thomas asked. The ceremony was quick. Queen Seraphina spoke ancient words while Elder Kesvar recorded everything officially. Thomas Reed became Thomas Reed Velthery, an official diplomat of the Asturian Empire with the power to call emergency peace meetings. It's done, Queen Seraphina said. Now you have the authority. Use it. Thomas activated the emergency peace protocol. Ancient laws required both human and Asturian leaders to attend when this protocol was activated. They had to come to the citadel within 6 hours or face serious legal consequences. The leaders arrived angry and suspicious. Director Walsh looked furious when she saw Thomas wearing Asturian diplomatic robes. This is proof, she shouted. Reed has betrayed humanity. He's become one of them. I am still human, Thomas said calmly in both English and Asturian. But I am also an Asturian diplomat now. And as an Asturian diplomat, I have the authority to present evidence of crimes against peace. He showed everyone the files. Director Walsh's messages, her financial plans, her deliberate sabotage of the peace talks. The proof was undeniable. Director Walsh has been trying to start a war to make money, Thomas explained. She accused me of being a traitor to distract everyone from her real plan. She wanted you all to be angry so you would stop talking and start fighting. The room went silent as everyone read the evidence. "This is unacceptable," said the human military commander. "If this is true, Director Walsh should be arrested immediately." "The evidence is clear," said the chief Asterian negotiator. "We have all been manipulated." Director Walsh tried to leave, but security guards stopped her. "You can't do this," she protested. "I have rights." "You have the right to a fair trial," Queen Seraphina said, "and you will get one. But first we will finish these peace talks." With Director Walsh removed and the truth revealed, the negotiations started again. This time, Thomas translated while wearing his new diplomatic robes. People listened more carefully now. They understood how close they had come to being tricked into war. The peace agreement was signed 18 hours later. The war was prevented. The planet would be shared equally between humans and Asterians, with both groups benefiting from its resources. Thomas watched the signing ceremony feeling exhausted but satisfied. Then he looked down at his Asterian robes and felt a wave of sadness. He had saved thousands of lives, but he had given up his identity as a human diplomat. Some humans would always see him as a traitor now. "Regrets?" Queen Seraphina asked, walking up beside him. "Some," Thomas admitted. "I knew what I was doing when I accepted the diplomatic status. But it still hurts to know that some of my own people will hate me for it. Not all of them. Many humans are grateful that you stopped the war. They understand that you made a sacrifice. But some won't ever forgive me." True. Some people value labels more than actions. They care more about what group you belong to than what you actually do. Queen Seraphina looked at him kindly. "But you saved lives, Commander Reed. That matters more than their opinions." Over the next few months, Thomas adjusted to his new role. Being an Asterian diplomat was different from being a human one. He had to learn new customs and protocols. Some humans refused to work with him. Some called him a traitor on public networks. But other humans reached out to thank him. Families who would have lost loved ones in the war. Soldiers who didn't have to fight. Normal people who just wanted peace. And he continued working with Queen Seraphina. They made a good team. He understood human thinking and she understood Asterian thinking. Together, they could solve problems that neither species could solve alone. "I've been thinking," Thomas said one day while they reviewed new trade agreements. "Director Walsh was right about one thing." "What's that?" "You and I have become very close. We're friends. And in diplomatic work, that's actually unusual. Most diplomats stay professional and distant." Queen Seraphina smiled. "Is that a problem?" "No. I think it's why we work so well together. We trust each other. We can be honest with each other. That makes us more effective, not less." "I agree. Though I do think the humans have an interesting saying about this. You can't judge someone until you've walked a mile in their shoes." We say that, yes. It means you can't understand someone unless you experience life from their perspective. In a way, that's what you did. You walked in Asterian shoes when you became a diplomat. You saw things from our perspective. And now you can help others understand both perspectives. Thomas nodded slowly. "I never thought of it that way. Maybe being both human and Asterian makes me more useful, not less." 6 months after becoming an Asterian diplomat, Thomas was invited to speak at a major human university. He was nervous. This would be the first time he publicly addressed humans since becoming a dual diplomat. The auditorium was packed. Some people looked curious. Others looked angry. Thomas could see protesters outside holding signs calling him a traitor. He walked to the podium and looked out at the crowd. Then he began to speak. I know some of you think I betrayed humanity when I became an Asterian diplomat. You're entitled to that opinion. But I want to tell you what I learned from making that choice. I learned that loyalty doesn't mean blindly supporting your own group no matter what they do. Real loyalty means doing what's right, even when it's hard, even when it costs you something. I learned that we have more in common with aliens than we think. Asterians love their families. They want safety for their children. They fear death and celebrate life. Just like us. I learned that the greatest threats to peace don't come from aliens who look different from us. They come from people who profit from division and war. People who manipulate us into hating each other because it serves their interests. And I learned that being a bridge between cultures doesn't mean you have to give up who you are. I'm still human. I still love Earth music and Earth food and Earth literature. But now I also understand Asterian poetry and Asterian history and Asterian values. Being both makes me richer, not poorer. And I hope that someday, more humans will choose to build bridges instead of walls. The auditorium was quiet when he finished. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Soon half the room was applauding. The other half sat in stony silence. That was okay, Thomas thought. He wasn't trying to convince everyone. He was just trying to show that there was another way to think about loyalty and identity. After the speech, a young woman approached him. Commander Reed? I'm a student here. I just want to say thank you. My brother was a soldier. He would have been in that war you prevented. Because of you, he's still alive. Thomas felt tears in his eyes. That's why I did it. For people like your brother. Some people will never understand that. But I do. And so do thousands of others. Queen Seraphina was waiting for him outside the university. How did it go? Mixed reactions. Some people understand. Some never will. That's the nature of bridge building. You stand in the middle, and people on both sides sometimes throw rocks at you. Thomas laughed. That's a depressing way to put it, but accurate. However, bridges are still necessary. Without them, both sides remain isolated and ignorant of each other. They walked back to the shuttle that would take them to the Citadel. Thomas looked up at the sky, thinking about how much his life had changed in less than a year. Seraphina, do you ever regret your choices? Being queen means you can't have a normal life. You can't make personal choices without considering political consequences. Often. But I also know that my position allows me to help people on a scale that ordinary citizens cannot. The personal sacrifices are worth the greater good. I think I'm starting to understand that. Back on the Citadel, they received news that 3 more species wanted to join the peace network they had created. The model of human-Asterian cooperation was inspiring others. It's working, Thomas said, looking at the applications. What we built is spreading. Yes, one prevented war led to more cooperation, which led to more trust, which led to more peace. It's a virtuous cycle instead of a vicious one. All because we chose to trust each other. Elder Kesvar joined them in the command center. Commander Reed, I have been authorized to offer you expanded diplomatic powers. Your success in preventing war and building cooperation has been noticed by the Galactic Council. They want to make you a roving ambassador with authority to mediate disputes across multiple star systems. Thomas was stunned. That's a huge responsibility. One you've proven capable of handling. Of course, it means even more time away from Earth. Even fewer chances to live a normal human life. The choice is yours. Thomas looked at Queen Seraphina. What do you think? I think you already know your answer. You wouldn't be happy returning to a quiet life after experiencing what's possible when different species work together. She was right. Thomas had found his purpose. It wasn't easy and it came with costs. but it was meaningful in a way that nothing else in his life had been. "I accept," he told Elder Kesvar. Over the next year, Thomas traveled to dozens of worlds. He mediated disputes between species who had been enemies for centuries. He built communication networks between aliens who had never worked together before. He taught others how to translate not just words, but cultural concepts. And he did it all while maintaining his dual identity. He was human and Asturian. He belonged to both groups and neither group completely. It was lonely sometimes, but it was also powerful. Director Walsh, meanwhile, was convicted of crimes against peace. She spent years in prison. Her company was dismantled and its resources redistributed to help rebuild communities damaged by conflicts she had encouraged. Justice was slow, but it was real. One evening, Thomas and Queen Seraphina sat together watching the stars from the Citadel's observation deck. They had just finished mediating another successful peace agreement. "Do you remember that first night?" Thomas asked. "When the translation computers broke and you asked me to help?" "Of course. You looked terrified." "I was terrified. I thought I would make a mistake and start a war. But you didn't. You rose to the challenge. And in the process, you discovered who you really are." Thomas thought about that. "I used to think identity was simple. You're born into a group and you stay loyal to that group for life. But it's not that simple, is it? No. Identity is a choice we make every day. We choose what values we stand for. We choose what kind of person we want to be. We choose how we treat others, especially those who are different from us. I chose to be a bridge, and that choice has saved thousands of lives." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching ships come and go from the Citadel. Each ship carried beings with their own hopes and fears, their own dreams and struggles. "Seraphina, do you think we'll ever achieve real peace? Not just the absence of war, but actual understanding between all species. Not in our lifetimes, maybe not ever, but every peace agreement we negotiate, every war we prevent, every bridge we build brings us closer. That has to be enough." It is enough, knowing that we're making progress, even if it's slow. 2 years into his role as roving ambassador, Thomas received an unexpected message from Earth. It was from his younger sister, whom he hadn't spoken to since becoming an Asturian diplomat. "Tom, I know we haven't talked in a long time. I was angry when you chose to work with the aliens. I thought you had abandoned us. But I've been following your work. I've seen the peace agreements you've negotiated, the lives you've saved. I was wrong to be angry. You didn't abandon humanity. You just expanded your definition of who deserves your loyalty. I'm proud of you. Your sister, Rachel." Thomas read the message 3 times, feeling emotions he had pushed down for months. His sister understood. Maybe others would too eventually. He showed the message to Queen Seraphina. "This makes you happy," she observed. "Yes, it's proof that people can change their minds. That prejudice isn't permanent. If my own sister can move from anger to understanding, maybe anyone can. Perhaps that's the most important lesson. Change is possible. People are not fixed in their beliefs. With patience and evidence, minds can open." Thomas sent a long reply to his sister, telling her about his work and his life on the Citadel. He invited her to visit. To his surprise, she accepted. Rachel's visit was awkward at first. She stared at his Asturian diplomatic robes. She struggled with the alien customs. She didn't know how to act around Queen Seraphina, but Thomas was patient. He showed her around the Citadel. He introduced her to aliens from a dozen species. He let her see the peace negotiations firsthand. On her last day, Rachel hugged him tight. "I get it now. I understand why you made the choices you made. This is important work, Tom. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. After she left, Thomas felt lighter. One person understanding was more valuable than 1,000 people's approval. Quality mattered more than quantity. More years passed. Thomas grew older but not old, thanks to Astrian medical technology that extended lifespans for diplomats who worked in deep space. He mediated dozens of conflicts. He built lasting friendships with beings from species humans had never even heard of. And through it all, Queen Seraphina remained his closest friend and colleague. They developed a shorthand way of communicating. They could read each other's thoughts in tense negotiations. They trusted each other completely. "We make a good team," Thomas said one day. "The best. I couldn't do this work without you. And I couldn't do it without you. We balance each other." Elder Kesvar, now quite old, smiled at them. "You two have become legendary. Young diplomats study your methods. They try to replicate your success. But they don't understand the secret." "What secret?" Thomas asked. "That the best diplomacy comes from genuine friendship and respect. You cannot fake the connection you two have built. That's why people trust you to mediate their conflicts. They see that you truly care about finding fair solutions." Thomas thought about his journey, from a simple translator to a roving ambassador, from someone who belonged to one group to someone who bridged many groups, from a person who avoided risks to someone who sacrificed his old life to prevent war. "I never planned any of this," he said. "I just made one choice and then another choice and then another. Each one took me further from where I started." "Do you regret it?" Queen Seraphina asked. "No. Every choice cost me something. But every choice also gave me something more valuable. Purpose. Meaning. The knowledge that my life matters because I helped others. That's the definition of a life well lived." 20 years after becoming an Astrian diplomat, Thomas received the Galactic Peace Prize. It was the highest honor given to those who worked for peace between species. The ceremony was attended by leaders from 50 different worlds. As he accepted the award, Thomas looked out at the crowd of humans, Asterians, and dozens of other species all gathered together peacefully. This was what he had worked for. Not the award, but this moment of unity. "I accept this honor on behalf of everyone who chooses bridge building over wall building," he said in his speech. "Everyone who sees differences as opportunities rather than threats. Everyone who believes that we are stronger together than apart. I especially accept this on behalf of Queen Seraphina, who took a chance on a tired human translator and helped him become something more. And on behalf of all the beings who gave me second chances when I made mistakes, who taught me their languages and customs with patience, and who showed me that the universe is full of people worth knowing if we're brave enough to reach out." The applause was overwhelming. Thomas saw his sister Rachel in the front row, tears streaming down her face. He saw Elder Kesvar nodding with approval. He saw aliens from a dozen species celebrating together. And he saw Queen Seraphina, standing and applauding with everyone else, proud of what they had built together. After the ceremony, Thomas and Seraphina walked through the Citadel gardens. They had done this many times over the years. It was their way of processing big moments. "You've come a long way from that exhausted translator who showed up in the middle of the night," Seraphina said. "We've come a long way. You were there for every step. You guided me. You trusted me when others didn't. This award is as much yours as mine. We're partners. Always have been. The best partnership I've ever had." They walked in comfortable silence for a while. Then Seraphina spoke again. "Thomas, I need to tell you something. The Astrian Council wants me to name a successor. Someone who can rule after I'm gone. Someone who understands both Astrian traditions and the larger galactic community." Thomas felt his heart skip. Are you sick?" No, nothing like that. But I'm getting older. It's time to plan for the future. And I want to name you as my successor." Thomas stopped walking. "Me? But I'm human. You're also Asturian. You've served our people for 20 years. You understand our laws and customs better than most Asturians. And most importantly, you've proven that you put the welfare of all people above personal ambition. I don't know what to say. You don't have to answer now. Think about it. But know that I wouldn't offer this if I didn't believe you were the right choice." Thomas thought about it for weeks. Becoming the leader of the Asturian Empire would mean even more responsibility, even less personal freedom, even more scrutiny from those who distrusted humans. But it would also mean he could do even more good. He could shape policies that affected billions of lives. He could continue the work of building bridges between species at the highest level. Finally, he gave Serafina his answer. "I'll do it. Not because I want power, but because I want to serve. Just like I've always done." Serafina smiled with relief. "I knew you'd say yes. You've never turned away from responsibility, no matter how difficult." The announcement caused controversy, as they both expected. Some Asturians protested having a human as their future leader. Some humans accused Thomas of completely abandoning his species. But many others celebrated. They saw it as proof that the barriers between species were finally breaking down. That identity was becoming less about biology and more about shared values. Thomas continued his work as roving ambassador while preparing to eventually lead the Asturian Empire. It was exhausting. It was demanding. It sometimes felt impossible. But it was also the most meaningful thing he had ever done. One evening, 30 years after that first emergency translation crisis, Thomas sat with Serafina watching the stars again. They were both older now, though Asturian medicine kept them healthy and active. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't asked me to translate that night?" Thomas asked. "The war would have happened. Thousands would have died. Director Walsh would have profited. And you and I would never have become partners. It's strange how one moment can change everything. Not strange. Natural. Every choice creates new possibilities. The question is whether we have the courage to follow those possibilities wherever they lead." Thomas looked at his hands. They were older now, marked by years of work and stress. But they were still strong. Still capable. "I'm glad I had the courage to follow where this path led. Even though it cost me my old life. Even though some people will never forgive me. It was worth it. Yes, it was worth it." They sat together in comfortable silence. Two beings from different worlds who had chosen to build something new together. Not just a diplomatic partnership, but a friendship that had changed the fate of civilizations. And as the stars wheeled overhead, Thomas thought about all the young diplomats who were learning from their example. All the people who were choosing bridges over walls. All the species who were learning to work together instead of fighting. The work would never be done. There would always be more conflicts to mediate, more prejudices to overcome, more walls to break down. But there would also always be people willing to do that work. People who believed, like Thomas did, that the universe was better when everyone had a seat at the table. And that was enough. It had to be enough. Because the alternative, giving up, retreating into isolation, letting fear and prejudice win, was unthinkable. Thomas Reed Velthery, former human translator, current Asturian diplomat, future leader of an empire, and eternal bridge builder, smiled as he watched the stars. He had found his purpose, and he had found it by being brave enough to cross a bridge that most people were too afraid to even approach. Some people would call that betrayal. He called it growth, and he wouldn't change a single step of his journey.